What's good, everybody? It's Lucas from Crunch Time, and today I want to have a conversation with you guys, and a polarizing conversation with Detroit Lions fan this offseason. It's about wide receiver Josh Reynolds, the veteran wide receiver, just visited with the Baltimore Ravens on Friday. He did not walk out of there with the deal. Could something still come out of that? Absolutely, but I expect Josh to visit with a couple more teams because Josh is in a position where he's a veteran wide receiver, very reliable in the receiving game and the blocking game. So he's in a spot where every team knows exactly what Josh Reynolds brings. He's been in multiple systems before and has adapted very well. So there's no risk with Josh Reynolds. He's in a position where he can kind of just feel out the market, see what happens. And if the Lions don't bring him back, which is the conversation we're about to get into, every team needs a Josh Reynolds. So it's not going to be hard for him to find himself on another roster. But what do I think? It's time to move on. It's time to upgrade from Josh. And I said all those nice things about Josh because I think he is a good NFL player. I don't want this to seem disrespectful towards Josh whatsoever. I think what he's done and with his time with the Detroit Lions has been very beneficial and impactful, especially when you talk about what Jared Goff needs to develop within this Ben Johnson offense. I think he's been very trustworthy and he's been very crucial for Jared Goff, especially on the third downs and in the big moments, except in the NFC Championship game. And again, that's not a jab at Josh, but that's just the fact of the reality. Josh, what he brings to this offense is reliability, consistency, that connection with Jared Goff. But if you can't do that in the NFC Championship for the team when they need it the most, and you don't have that highest ceiling at the wide receiver 2 position for this team, which is a top 5 offense with you as the wide receiver 2, well, what are we doing here then? Again, no disrespect towards Josh, but he had 40 catches, a little over 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So again, especially early on in the season, he had 20 straight catches leading the season off, where he's either first down or touchdown. So he's an impactful player. But I look at Jameson Williams, and I look at what he did in that back half of the season where you're like, oh, he's starting to get some confidence. You look at J-Mo in that back half of the season, you can see he started putting some things together with his game and becoming a little bit more polished than he has been. The game kind of slowed down for him. You could see it. So you're talking about 40 catches, 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Do I think Jameson Williams can get that? Yes. I think that's very possible for Jameson Williams. Absolutely. And you also bring in the fact that the Lions just re-signed Donovan Peoples-Jones for dirt cheap. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's not the most productive wide receiver over his career. He's at an 800-yard season, which is more than Josh when he was in Cleveland. But he has a lot of intangibles, especially the Lions need somebody as an X wide receiver. I don't think he's a number 1 X wide receiver, but he's got that X wide receiver build. So you give him a little bit more time in the system to develop both with the offense and with Jared. I think he could have a DJ Chark type of impact, maybe not statistically, but it's just as far as a presence to stretch the field on the outside, not to mention to go with Jameson Williams, to go with Sam Laporta, to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Absolutely, I think that production could naturally, just with Josh Reynolds leaving, just get replaced. And then you look at this wide receiver class in the 2024 NFL draft, and there's the Malik Neighbors, there's the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, the Rome Odunze's, the Brian Thomas's. I don't think the Lions are going to go get that, but you look in the second and third and even fourth round of this draft, there is a lot of talent. You look at the Ladd McConkey's, Xavier Legette, Brendan Rice's. You can keep going down the list in this draft. There's probably going to be 5, 6, even 7 wide receivers in this draft that go on throughout the course of the career and have an impact, a significant impact on NFL rosters. Xavier Worthy, so I'm not the biggest fan, but shit, if he works out and proves me wrong, he's going to be an elite deep threat for some team. So Josh Reynolds, you look at the ceilings of those players and saying, okay, we move Josh out of here. We get a guy in the second or third round where he doesn't even have to step up the wide receiver, the edge and corner solidified. You could argue that wide receiver is the next biggest need depth-wise for the Detroit Lions, because you could say safety, but you look at the safety core of this room, of the Detroit Lions. Kirby Joseph, Ife Melifonwu, and you could add Brian Branch in there. He's a nickelback, but he plays safety a lot. So you have those 3. You go to the Lions wide receiver room, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. You could add in Khalif Raymond, but he's got an injury that not a lot of people are talking about right now, and we don't know what that's going to be. I think there's a little bit more concern depth-wise in the wide receiver room, especially when you look at J-Mo's. I just hyped him up, but he does have some injury concern. So you look at possibly adding Xavier Legette, a Brendan Rice on the outside, a Ladd McConkey to go on the other side of the slot when Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. So you're talking about how are you going to cover the middle of the field with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ladd McConkey, and Sam Laporta? Do I think that's an upgrade? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Josh, he's a great wide receiver 3, a good to low end wide receiver 2. But if you add a wide receiver 2, like the likes of Jameson Williams, that with the ceiling of a wide receiver 1, this offense upgrades. And I understand there's concern with, okay, Josh Reynolds brings consistency. You look at the wide receivers in this draft, like I just preached on, you can find consistency in this draft with more upper end talent. So Josh, his time in Detroit was very beneficial for both, I think, the Lions and for Josh in his career. He's coming off his best season. So I think there was a good time that in Detroit, but it's time to part ways. And again, it's no disrespect, but Josh Reynolds, it's time to move on.